Okay.
There you go. So now we're
there.
recording, even though Don is gone.
Okay.
So we
good.
picked this up and we haven't missed anything important. And Don, I hope you're getting this recording off the cloud where Kevin has put it.
And we hope we get Don back into the meeting here too.
Yeah, we probably will.
We will.
And
Okay.
Kevin,
I'll
it may
text
ask
him and
Kevin.
let him know that
to-
Kevin is hosting right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Kevin, you may
Thanks,
be
Tom.
asked to admit him.
Okay.
Yeah. So go on with this.
Okay, but the other thing on this matter would be, we also need to have a direct line to, I guess it's Santa Rosa Department of Forestry or CalFire. We calling them might be a good solution too, instead of trying to navigate that cumbersome website of theirs. Calling them and direct contact like Tom did this last time. But anyway, do we want to wait a little bit longer for Dawn to get back, or should we go on to the next item?
I'd say
Let's
go on.
Go
We
on.
still have a
Go to the
quorum, and I'm telling Don that we lost him, so he'll get back on when he can. I'm sure he knows
Okay.
he's off.
Okay, Tom.
Sorry, do
Well,
we have an action item coming out of this? Does somebody?
no, I don't think we do.
Yeah, I think we don't need a motion, but I'd say that, Robert, maybe you want to take lead of this and put together some effort to set up a meeting with Lynn and get her advice, an informal meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe Melissa will want to sit in on that.
Yeah, we need to,
I'll do that.
okay, we need to take it upon ourselves to get more involved with maybe Fogger, like, and make a meeting with them. I know Lynn. Okay,
Let's meet with,
Lynn
Lynn
Walton.
Walton. Lynn Walton is the president of Fogger.
Right.
let's meet with her.
Okay, Melissa and Robert. Remind me, Melissa, and we'll get on that, okay?
Okay.
Okay, hey, Tom, I wanted to ask you something. I sent a PDF to
Yeah,
Tom.
I have that.
Is that something you can share on screen with us
It
while we
is.
wait for Dawn to get back?
It is. Let me just,
Because that leads into the next item.
okay, let me get this on the right screen here.
Okay.
Just give me a second. You can go ahead and
Sure.
introduce it, Robert. I'll get it up as soon
Yeah,
as quickly as I can
This
here.
was the item that was on last month, and we were talking about what this type of a THP was, and I mentioned that it's a NTMP, which is a non-industrial timber management plan that the Bauer family had put into effect many years ago. That's why I think it's got the old number on it. You guys all see that 009? I think it was when they started this timber management plan. And it's called the Bauer Non-Industrial TMP, Timber Management Plan. So when they want to go in, it's kind of in a logging plan that's in perpetuity. They've got hundreds of acres of land that they own. So when they want to go in and do a timber operation, you'll see that they have to do some kind of a application or filing here. And then they are given dates where they have to complete their timber operations for. So I happen to deal with these kind of things as far as assessors parcel numbers all the time. And I looked up these timber or these assessors parcel numbers. You'll see the different acreage sizes on all these. And they're all north of the Pacific Woods Road. And I attached a couple more maps just to keep it real simple, because this was I did navigate the website, and it's 480, 48.6 megabyte document, 168 page document. And so I skimmed through it and just found some maps that would maybe help us as council members to see where this is going on. This non-industrial timber management plan of the Bauer families is all the areas where you see those cross-haired lines. I encircled, or I enclosed the area in red there, which is where this is going to be taking place. You see where it says Pacific Woods Road at the bottom there, and you'll see the blue stream there, which is Robinson Gulch, which is close to where Melissa lives there. And then the other gulch to the north that comes off of Ocean Ridge subdivision is the beginnings of Big Gulch. And they end up in the ocean in our subdivisions here west of town. So you'll see from this map that encompasses the different parcel numbers, the APN numbers, 38 acres, and the other one is another certain amount of acreage. So you'll see Pacific Woods Road goes up through town. Yes, thank you, Tom. Now we're at where the dot is on that one parcel, that represents 2 of the APN numbers. That's a total of 80 acres there. Then go a little bit to the right, Tom, towards Pacific Woods Road. That piece is included. Then down to the next one, that little piece there is also part of it. And then the one right further down from there. To the left, Tom, to the left. That big piece to the left further. Yeah, right there. That's behind the industrial area there where Bedrock is. And that's behind where GBS is. That's Gualala Rents, I should say, and where the junior shop is. So those 1, 2, 3, 4 parcels encompass a portion of the NTMP, just so you all know where this is going to be taking place. And again, it might not be a big logging operation. It may be just something that Mr. Bauer plans on going in and removing some trees. This is a NTMP. It's in perpetuity. He can go in and out when he so desires. That's how I understand this particular logging plan. Do you have-
Robert, did you learn anything about the extent of what he plans to harvest there? It's a management plan, so I assume that's not a plan to clear cut anything, but to do a thinning of the trees or limited takedown.
I did skim through those, and I don't remember, Tom, from all the 168 pages that I skimmed through, what kind of a plan it was. You know, again, I downloaded it. I could send it to somebody if they would want to see it, the 168 pages, because within it, you'd probably figure that out. But as you see, there's other areas that are part of his NTMP that are not circled in red.
Right.
And those have been logged before in the past. To what extent, I don't know. This is a plan that the Bauer family has put into place so that they can log whenever they want to or need to, or when maybe timber prices are at their best. I don't know all the specifics of it, but I did want to at least show to the council what I discovered from a location perspective and roughly the size that's going on here, what he's applied for on this particular timber operation. Does that help everybody a little bit?
I think so.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
You know
to the
what?
extent feasible.
I don't
Yeah.
really know what we can do about a timber management plan opposed to a THP harvest plan. But you know, and John has always been pretty open about his plans on timber, and I think one of the things that would be nice would be a BLP would make an effort to come out and talk to the public when they're planning something like this. We have a lot of homeowners over here. This is where that tower went up a few years ago. You can remember the uproar we had about that.
We'll go to the next map, Tom.
So if they're cutting down trees there, I imagine we're going to get an uproar about that. And I know that they cut down some trees in another section that they control back behind RCMS behind town. And there wasn't very much noise about that. But there was a large area was basically clear cut. And I think it's just good to let the public know what's going on so that they don't get concerned about it when the process starts. So maybe the council could talk to John and just say, hey, John, when you're finding something like this, maybe you could stop by and tell us what you have in mind.
You can go to the next map if you don't mind, Tom, and then
This one here.
yeah, you'll see that bring it down a little bit west. Okay, where is the one where the
Here's the
okay,
dot.
the dot, go over one more piece or 2 more pieces the other way.
This
To
one?
the,
Or
to
this
the
one?
left, yeah, and then up one. That is where roughly the antenna, the cell tower got put. Either that,
Okay.
because those homeowners that are to the right of your cursor at the moment, there's some owners in that area that I know, one of them being Terry Fardresher, who was vocal about the cell tower going in on that 80-acre piece to the left of your cursor there.
Was that
So,
here?
Yeah, that right there is roughly
Okay,
where
that's the one I was thinking of. So I may have
Yeah.
incorrectly said it was in this area. It's in
right.
this area, but it's close by. And I don't know how many homes are in these
Those are all,
particular.
those are all forested parcels, okay? They're just large land holdings by the Bauer family and by other families. Now, when you come to the small 1/3 acre parcels that are up and down Pacific Woods Road,
Yeah.
there is a buffer zone between the backs of those parcels. There's a setback that you can't just log right up to the property line. And then there's water courses and ishas and all sorts of things that they do have to deal with, the timber company. And what you're seeing there is a road primarily that goes all the way up to Ocean Ridge subdivision. It goes up through,
This one here?
yeah, that's a road, just a dirt road, goes up right through up in there, and then it comes out right about there on Ocean Ridge Drive. And that piece where your cursor is right now is actually not owned, is actually owned by North Gualala Water Company, because I believe it is part of the watershed that they need to protect for their intake on that gulch, which is the Robinson Gulch, or wait a minute, that's the Big Gulch, and they have an intake on Big Gulch for water, for supplying water in Gualala. Although it's not a large water intake source, just like the one south of Pacific Woods Road on Robinson Gulch, they are both part of where the North Gualala Water Company gets its water. I mean, 85, 90, 95% comes from back in the Elk Prairie well number 4. So that's what I've learned about water over the years. But those two gulches are, they need to be protected, and the timber companies do have to protect those to a certain, they can't just log in these deep gulches. There's no way you could feasibly do it. It's too steep.
Okay.
So, but this kind of a map kind of helps people see or understand a little bit more about what kind of terrain these companies are dealing with when they're logging. I mean, when you go down Pacific Woods Road, you look towards the back of the industrial zoned area there, where bedrock is and all that. Yeah, you can see that there was some logging done on that piece right there where you were there, right there. Yeah. Back behind Gualala Rents and back behind our local gravel company. It's sparse in there. You can see that there was logging done. Further up, it's out of mind, out of sight, kind of. And I don't know if it's disturbing or if it's affecting homeowners in that area.
Here's your place, Melissa, right here.
So Henry,
And,
what's your input?
Well,
Go-
and if you
I
look
would say
to the north,
Melissa
you'll
go
see
first.
that it's right in there where your cursor is. In there and above and to the right and then to the left, all in that area in there has been almost clear cut. And it has made a serious heavy duty problem for this park, because the redwoods were very large and were absorbing a great deal of water, and they had to dig a trench all around this place for the water runoff that was no longer being absorbed by trees. And John Bauer didn't bother to tell anyone what he was doing. There had been an agreement that he wouldn't cut it, but he did anyway.
Mhm.
And these are all, you can see these lands have been harvested at times.
Clear cut, practically clear
Now,
cut right
some
in.
of those lands there that your cursor is on is part of Gualala Redwoods timber.
Yep.
That slender L, that's where Bauer land starts, Tom. That slender, long, tall L.
This
Yeah,
here?
right there. Uh-huh. And then to the left, those are Bauer Limited Partnership properties. Yes.
Good to know.
Okay, Henry, what did you have to say?
Well, I was just going to say this seems like another thing where it would make sense to reach out to Fogger. I know if you search that NTMP number, like the first hit on Google is from Fogger, talking about it from 2009 and complaining about it in 2009 about old growth cutting and floodplain logging. So this is another thing where if they have the relevant, yeah, exactly. That's what I put in the chat. if they have the relevant expertise, they may already be concerned about this. Maybe they don't know about it and want to take a look at it. But again, I just feel like we as a council don't have the relevant knowledge and background, and so if they have people who do, then I think we should try to make use of that.
There are a number of groups that have commented on this very plan.
Right. Again, though, this is 13 years ago that they commented
Yeah.
on it. So
Yeah.
how many of those groups are still interested, or still whether there's even an avenue for, one of the things that they say on here, and that Robert, I think you were hinting at a little bit, is this is an active management plan. It's not clear that anybody really has much of a say, since it got approved, what happens from time to time.
Yeah, it's
So-
pretty much set in stone. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what one of the things Fogger was complaining about, was that it's a sensitive area, and once they get this approved, then they can pretty much do what they want. So
And they get approved even though they violate environmental laws.
yeah, and I mean, I think once they don't have to go through any environmental review
They
once they've gotten
do.
it approved. No, once it's approved, I think they don't. That was, at least, again, according to Fogger, this is one of the things that they're complaining about. They're saying once this goes into place, then they don't have to go through subsequent review. Trying to see where I found that.
Well, I'm wondering if there's an action here, or whether we add this
This is-
to the last one and maybe have a conversation with Fogger and to report
Yeah.
back to the next meeting.
I
And I
we
see
do-
Donna's back with us here.
Oh, is he? Okay, good.
Welcome
think-
back, Don.
Yeah, sorry
think
about
we
that.
do the same-
My landlord had to reboot the router. It's not under my control. And
Oh,
so,
my.
but
Huh.
the meeting was
Fortunately,
on.
Kevin has been recording it to the cloud.
Yeah, it just interrupted the recording. So
Your recording stopped. We all got notice of that. And then Kevin started recording to the cloud. So you'll have a 2-piece recording.
yeah, it's gonna have
Put up
to
on
be
YouTube.
with a little gap in there probably, but
Okay. Well, so
But just to finish that, Mary, in response, what Fogger was saying, and I don't know anything beyond what I'm seeing here, is that an NTMP is a long-term logging plan with no expiration date. Once an NTMP is approved, the landowner can cut trees without further environmental review by filing a simple notice of timber operations, which is what we got.
mhm.
So again, I don't know if there's an avenue for objection even, and I do think what makes sense, follow up with Fogger, see if they're still interested in this, if they still have expertise on staff that can help us think about this issue, and go from there, just because I feel so underqualified to know. And I mean, presumably one of us could sink a whole lot of time into trying to figure some of this stuff out, but if it's a 168-page plan, that's probably pretty jargon heavy and dense reading to begin with, even on a page-by-page basis, and then at the end of that we find out, well, there's nothing anybody can do anyway because this is a perpetual plan. That's not a very good use of anybody's time. So I'm happy to write an email over to Fogger and see if they can lend us any knowledge or any time to review, to think about these two specific ones, but then also have that start a more general conversation about if they can be a resource for us, or we could be a resource for them in responding to ongoing logging.
Yeah, I think a more general email to Fogger that we would be interested in anything coming up in the future. I mean, these two that we brought up for informational purposes, probably, mostly informational purposes, are I don't think anything we can really do anything about at the present time. So maybe going forward, we can become more involved. And
So
an email from you, and then Melissa and I, or whatever we can arrange with Lynn Walton of Fogger, might be the first steps.
okay, great. Yeah, and maybe we can also just invite her to join us for the next council meeting.
Or that, yeah,
And have a discussion.
okay.
Dan has a question.
Dan, yeah, go ahead, Dan.
You say there's nothing we can do about this, essentially permanent permit. Wouldn't that, sorry, depend on whether or not they violated the conditions of the permit?
Who
The
would be-
parameters that were set forth in the permit, if they violate the conditions of the permit, then you can do something.
That may be
Who would-
true. I don't know, but it's worth looking into. I think that's something that can be covered in a conversation with Lynn.
Yeah, if we
And-
know what their parameters of the permit were, then we could say, hey, you know, you're only supposed to take hardwoods out, or you're only supposed to do this. You know, that's, I've run into that when cutting homeowner firewood.
Mhm.
Let's just, you know, I just want to put it, to be fair, in the interest of fairness, I want to say, John used to come to our meetings and talk about stuff like this, and I kind of miss his presence. I think the council would benefit from having John or somebody else from BLP come and talk to us when they are planning a cut, just so the town knows about it, just so their neighbors know about it, and they're good neighbors, and generally they will talk about that. So in addition to Lynn, I think we had to make a little outreach to John and the company and say, hey, we kind of miss you guys coming to our meetings, the water company too.
He receives
reestablish that.
the agenda every month. I send it out. He is on the list of our agenda receiving people, and he has thanked me several times for sending him the agenda over the last couple of 2 or 3 months, but he is yet to arrive, and he probably saw that this was on the agenda for this week.
True. All right.
Well, chances are he's gonna watch this YouTube recording.
Yeah,
I think
Yes.
that's what he typically does. It is regrettable that he doesn't attend anymore, because I think we would value his input on a subject like this, and especially since it is his property. And he knows more about that than any of us do, quite frankly. But I think he will see what we're talking about, certainly.
Well, I think this is a good conversation, but we probably beaten it into the ground.
yeah, let's move on, folks.
Next subject.
Okay,
So where we leave it is Mary and Robert are gonna reach out to Father, and then we'll readdress at the next meeting.
and we can add reaching out to the timber operator or to the property owner also, okay? And then maybe invite them if we see fit or see there a need to have input. Okay, so we had the amended agenda, and Kevin was gonna give us an update on the CDP proposal from Alwan.
Thank you, Robert. Don and I have been working on this with the Alwan CDP, and what has been really holding them up has been their septic design. They found that based on the footprint that they originally submitted, it couldn't accommodate their septic tank. So with that being said, we've been kicking the can down the road with this CDP for a while. Don and I have been in contact with Mrs. Alwan, and we're pleased to report that the septic design was completed. However, they've run into a couple other glitches as well. Once again, another governmental agency, California Fish and Wildlife, is now not accepting their letter for a water meter. And so they're having to look now at other options, and that could be submitting a new letter for permit to get a permit. So she's hoping to have everything done and meet on site with Don and I before the August meeting, but she still is keeping in touch with us, and we appreciate it. And we hope to finally get GMAC review and action on it. Don, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, I think both of us have indicated to her that we can make ourselves available, certainly. If she gives us a few little options on dates, but we're ready to review this on site whenever she's ready.
So
And
she
we're,
had, with-
oh, go ahead.
she had withdrawn her CDP back a few months back, right?
No, her CD, well, she pulled the review of her CDP from our agenda because there was some issues with the septic tank
Okay.
design. And so she was waiting to get that redesigned, and then she was gonna, once everything was in place, then Don and I were gonna walk the site with her. So we have a better understanding of it and we can report back to GMAC for review and action.
So it's a septic tank, not the septic leach field, huh?
I think it was a septic tank.
Or the
Don,
entire, okay,
I think it, yeah,
okay.
I'm not sure.
By the
Now, I
way,
know-
Robert, are you aware, well, or anybody, whether or not there's an expiration date for a CDP?
I've heard
There
various
is.
numbers over the years, yeah. If you keep applying or, and it'll expire on a yearly basis, I believe, but then you just extend it every year, and for a maximum of 5 years.
Right.
Okay. So, but the other question I had, they're sharing water with the adjacent property at the moment, right? Because the adjacent property has a North Gualala Water Company hookup. If there's an issue with getting, I mean, if they're not on a list, on a will serve list with North Gualala Water Company, they're more than likely going to have to drill a well.
And that appears to be the direction she's going to take. So I
Okay.
guess the letter that she had is not being accepted by Cal Fish and Wildlife.
Mhm.
So therefore she now is, like you say, she's gonna lose that meter hookup.
Not
So-
that she didn't have one to begin with, I don't think.
She had one, but I have the feeling what may have happened is the letter may have expired.
Okay, but from my understanding, like say what's going on in Gualala right now, north of town, not the one that's close to town, the manufactured home, but the one further north of town. The big box kind of a structure there behind where the dentist is, Alan Cox. That had a will serve letter that was on a list of, I'd say, close to 100 people from prior to the water moratorium being instigated by the state.
Right.
So they're on a list that doesn't expire.
Okay.
Yet the one that's closer to town, the manufactured home, they had drilled a well there, the old Sunstrom piece.
Oh,
So there's one of two ways I think you can go. If you want to build in this area, if you're within the North Gualala Water Company jurisdictional district. And that is, via a well, or if you're on a will serve list and the state recognizes that. So I'm just wondering, if.
So that's what she's having, and Don and I can reach out to her for more clarification, but that seems to be the issue that she's dealing with right now.
Okay. Well, we'll wait to hear from more from you guys on that then. Okay.
Be happy to report back.
Okay. So I guess we move on to council matters. Old business, if any. Do we have any? We're getting to about 7:42 at the moment. Okay. Then let's go on to the Parks Committee, and that's Kevin, Dan, and Henry.
So maybe, I think my
what-
update should be pretty quick. So
Yeah, I
maybe
was
I'll
gonna
go, and
say,
then I think
let's
Kevin's
have-
will be.
Yeah, let's have Henry talk about the Board of Supervisors actions, and then we can kind of go into other areas.
Okay.
Yeah, so the good news is the county got the tree work done, at least more or less. It's not clear to me whether there was a little bit that they wanted to do that they didn't quite manage, or whether they did in fact get all of it. So the park is now reopened from a tree perspective. There are still substantial parts of the park that are closed for other reasons. But it was the trees that were causing just the full park closure. So large areas of the park are back open, a relief to many, including myself. Things that are still closed include the tennis court, the basketball court. It's not entirely clear to me whether that's like supposed to be closed, but it isn't really. There's a part of the path around the pond that they really don't want you to go on for reasons that are obvious. If you walk on it, it's a disaster. Picnic areas back open, playgrounds are back open, ball fields back open. So there's a ton of work that still needs to happen at that park. I was unable to attend the most recent Board of Supervisors meeting. I have asked some questions, including one from the last meeting about what they were doing with the wood. I never got a response to that. They had been supposed to notify me what was going to happen with the park, and then it wasn't until I commented at the supervisors meeting that they said, "Oh, no, it's about to be back open." So they're not very communicative, but I'm still going based on what I had seen before, which is I can't imagine they're going to put in the money required to reopen parts of it that are not reopened yet, with the exception of maybe they will do work on the spillway and get the path back open, but I don't have any particular confidence in that either. So we are where we are, which is actually slightly better than I expected we would be at this time a couple months back. I'm still very far from satisfied with the condition of the park, but it's a lot better than having it be closed perpetually. So that's where we stand right now.
Okay, Henry, thanks.
Mhm.
And then we also have a subtitle here where we were going to be introduced to some LAFCO information. Was Kevin going to do that?
Yes, thank you, Robert. I'd be happy to kind of let you know on behalf of Dan and Henry and I where we're at right now. All of this information really was prompted by the closure of our park and how we can get it open. And there really are 4 options available to our community. One is we can remain with the County of Mendocino, and as Henry politely put it, it doesn't appear there's any more money to bring our park back to the standards that it was with the basketball court open, the tennis court, the pathway around the pond, the amphitheater. There's no money right now in the budget. There's none proposed, and the county's saying right now that they have a budget deficit. So parks will definitely be low on the priority, and it has been, and they have been in previous budget cycles. The next option would be if there's and this information is being provided by LAFCO, which, if you don't know, it's the Local Agency Formation Commission. So they handle all governmental expansions, extensions, annexations, the whole 9 yards. They're the main body that reviews all applications and then makes recommendations from that. The next option is an annexation with an existing city. The only existing city that is near us that would be applicable would be Point Arena. The third option would be to create a special community service district. We have one community service district right now, and that's the Gualala Community Service District. And they are the primary sewer supplier, I guess, for Gualala. Because they are a special district, they can have a park element added to their sphere of influence. So that is an option that we could go. The one downside to that is if we started a special district, the residents within Gualala and the rest of the sphere of influence for the service district would be taxed an assessment fee to not only repair, but restore and maintain Bower Park and any other parks that happen to come under the purview of the community service district. So once again, we would be taxing our residents for services that we should already get. And lastly is the idea of incorporation, which is basically creating our own city. I've had an opportunity to speak with many groups. I've talked to officials from the city of Point Arena. I've talked with LAFCO officials. I've talked with our county supervisor, Ted Williams. I've also reached out to the Redwood Coast Recreation Center. If you don't know, they're the one that handles the adjacent park area to Bower Park. They're affectionately called RCRC. Coast Youth Little League, I've talked with their board. Also, Coast Youth or Coast Life Support District, which is our ambulance provider. I have met with the board of the Gualala Community Services District and also various community members. And the input that I received from them, I will share with you, and then I'll kind of wrap it up real quick. A county maintained park, there is no money to maintain or operate Bower Park. So it would remain in a declined state. Should we have another problem again where it's liability with trees falling, they'll come in, clean up the trees. But as far as a use for our families in the area, it's not in their interests or money. And an annexation with a neighboring city, that is probably a very difficult process to go through because it would not only take an approval of the Point Arena City Council, but also their voters and the voters of the area being annexed. So that is more of a complicated process to go through. The community service district is a viable option. And where LAFCO basically sets the parameters there, it says the community service district can establish any sphere of influence they want. The easiest is if you do it with existing boundaries. The one that we're looking at and proposing right now is the exact same boundaries as the Redwood Coast Fire Protection District, or not Redwood Coast, the Coast South Coast Fire Prevention District, which encompasses basically everything from the Gualala River north to Iverson, and then up to the ridge and areas past the ridge. That would be the area that would be considered for incorporation. So it would include Gualala, Anchor Bay, and unincorporated areas as well. That could be added to the special district. But the problem with that, going to a special district, is that we would now assess everybody within that area a certain amount of money to pay for the maintenance and operation of the parks. And at this time when everything is really tight, that's probably not a good idea to go to the residents and say, hey, by the way, we want you to pay more money. So I would personally say that might be a non-starter. And in talking to some of the other groups, they have that similar feeling that they don't want to pay more money. So lastly, is a question of incorporation. And incorporation is basically forming a new city with the boundaries that you would like. Once again, we could go with the fire district boundaries. With the new city, all of the services, everything would now be the responsibility of the city. So because Gualala is really a self-supported community, because we have Coast Life Support, we have the fire district, we have Bauer Water, we have the Community Service District providing our sewer. We have RCMS providing our health services. So the only really service that the county of Mendocino is providing us, and we had a great report from Sheriff Kendall, is law enforcement. So that's the only service that we would have to look outside of our area to contract for service. If we were to become a city, then we would get, and they call it a revenue neutrality, and all of you got I hope you all did, got the incorporation book, which is quite extensive. But there's a revenue neutrality clause, and basically it says you can't take more money from an existing agency that would put them out of business or hurt them financially. But what you can do is you can negotiate the revenue for the new city and for the other existing agency, in this case would be the county. But that would be, all of us in Gualala and Anchor Bay and the other areas would get the benefit of the property tax, the sales tax, the bed tax, which it's basically, we would get 2% of every room night for the hotels in our area. We would get the gas tax, we would get the vehicle license fees, and we'd get other subsidies from the state of California that go to cities, but not unincorporated areas. So this would be a revenue draw for us. The elected city council would then determine where those funds in the general fund could be used based on the needs of our community and not based on the whims of the county. Because right now, all the money we pay in, and we're paying about $8 million in property taxes to Mendocino County. And we're getting, and I open it up to anybody, if you have any ideas on how much money we get back from the county, I'd love to hear from you. Or any services that the county has provided us. Other than police services, I'd love to hear from you. I have not had anybody yet be able to offer what the county wants with us or wants to offer us, but they definitely want to take our money. So we're paying $8 million. Hypothetically, if we went into a 50-50 split with the county of Mendocino, just on property tax alone, we would have $4 million of revenue coming in, guaranteed. That's more money than what Point Arena gets for their general fund from property tax. I don't have the numbers for sales tax. I don't have the numbers for any of the others. But that revenue would now come to the city of XYZ. And it can be used to fix our roads. It can be used to handle the street, the town center plan. It can be used to bring in Wi-Fi into the area. It could be used to upgrade and provide supplemental funds to the fire district, to the ambulance service, to the sewer district, because I have to tell you, their infrastructures are being stretched. And there are people moving here. I can tell you right now that the county is not going to spend any money on a private water company. So basically, we talked earlier about a pond or something to help support Gualala water. There are no funds that are going to come from the county on that. A city also has the leverage to do bonds and bonds, and there was one other, but anyway, there's more leverage for a city to be able to qualify for those funding sources that could help with our infrastructure right now. as GMAC and a community that isn't even identified in the census, yeah, Gualala is not going to get anything at the present time. We're basically dead in the water. So what I'm basically bringing to the to GMAC tonight is one of the first things we need to do, and this comes from the direction not only from LAFCO, but our supervisor and other interest groups, is basically we need to do an informal survey and get signatures from our residents to see if they would be even interested in trying to incorporate a city, and with no obligation on their part to vote for it, but just to give GMAC the opportunity to maybe establish a subcommittee at Robert's direction to now start collecting signatures, find out if the community wants to go that route, and then we can move forward with the ideas about an incorporation based on the guidelines submitted by LAFCO. That pretty much sums up what's going on. I'll be talking to other groups as well, because I'm really trying to get everybody's feedback. The other benefit too would be if we had our own city, we would be able to have our own planning and development department, and we could contract out building permits. So it would speed up the time that building permits are processed. And not only that, we would also not have to have our architects and contractors drive up to, and inspectors driving down from Fort Bragg or Ukiah. So we would be able to help our building community more by keeping the services local, and those services basically are user fees. So that makes it easy that if you're pulling a permit, you're going to pay for the permit, which is going to cover processing costs and the other overhead. So anyway, there are some benefits, and I'm sure that there's probably a lot of questions and comments, and maybe even some negative thoughts on the idea of this. But I wanted to present it to the GMAC group tonight and see what their thoughts are. So Robert, I turn it back to the group. Oh, if Henry or Dan have any questions as part of the current park committee, be happy to hear from them.
Go ahead, Henry.
Henry and Dan, let me just say one thing. I'm looking at this as all kind of tying in with the research you've done on parks.
Yeah,
and
correct.
that this could possibly lead to something further down the road. We don't know yet, but how we handle that as a council here, we'll talk about after we hear from you two on this agenda item. Okay.
You're
So-
muted, Henry.
Whatever else you still wanted to say regarding the parks, let's hear that, and then we'll go back to what Kevin presented us with.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as the parks are concerned, I totally concur with Kevin that leaving it in county hands, given their budget situation and the fact that their priorities are just clearly elsewhere for reasons, you know, good or bad, they are. So I agree with that. I do think the idea of adding parks to an existing services district would be something that would make sense for a park subcommittee to discuss. I think that anything beyond that, whether it's annexation or incorporation, that gets away from the remit of a park subcommittee pretty quickly. And also, I think is just such a much larger conversation that beginning it at 8 o'clock in a regularly scheduled meeting is probably not going to lead to the full consideration that something like that deserves. I don't know if there's appetite or scope for a one-off GMAC meeting that's really just focused on we are going to discuss this question of, are we interested in a new services district? Are we interested in annexation or incorporation? Like that feels like it needs its own space. That's just my take on the matter.
Okay, Henry. And then Dan?
I think it comes down to, if we want to deal with the park and some of these other issues, is revenue streams. The county has pretty much tightened the faucet on any revenue stream for the park. In terms of getting any money, any blood out of that turnip, we're not going to get it. If we wanted to do any of those four things that LAFCO suggested, the other three things that LAFCO suggested that don't involve trying to get money out of the county, then personally I favored either the annexation or the service district expansion approach to it. In addition to what Kevin said about the annex or incorporation, a thing is we also would have the right to regulation. We would be able to pass ordinances if we were a city, not just regulation of permits and such, but actually have enforceable ordinances. I mean, if you wanted to put parking meters on Highway 1, technically I suspect we could do it, but not that anybody would want to, but that's just a for instance. And that was kind of where I was going with that.
You'd be finding sawed off.
Okay, okay, let's wait a second, Melissa. Let's decide on, we should have a little bit of input on what Kevin has presented us with, but we should limit it probably to maybe 3 minutes each or something, just to get some feedback to Kevin on what he's researched here, or this document. I don't know if you've all had a chance to look at it yet. It's pretty voluminous also. So how would we handle this in the future? I'd like to hear from everybody a little bit. What do you even think about this?
I'd like to give my thoughts.
Okay, Melissa, you get the first three.
Before Kevin started speaking, the idea of incorporating was like, no, 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 and hell no, because, all I could think of was that, okay, now we've got to have this, this, and this, and we're going to have taxes. And I don't like that idea at all. I didn't realize, I wasn't thinking that once we incorporate, we get what, $4 million? I think that a good article in the ICO from someone like Kevin, who's done the research, who just a general article saying, golly, if we incorporated, this could happen. Not, oh, I think we should incorporate, but this is what incorporation would do for Walla Walla. That's my input.
Okay.
All I needed was a minute.
I mean, this is a new idea to us. Well, some of us may have heard this being proposed before in the past, but nobody has done their research on it. So I'm kind of new to what I'm hearing from Kevin here, but I'd like to hear from the other council members what they think about this initial idea. I mean, there's 3 or 4 options we're hearing. I always thought that the Community Services District, which I was a big part of back in the 90s, could take on additional powers such as lighting district, parking district, whatever, park recreation, park district, things like that. But I recall from all the years I was involved with the sewer district that they had their hands full, and I think they still have their hands full with just issues concerning sewer, including potentially expanding up to the ridge, all the way up Pacific Woods Road, all the way up Old Stage Road, and maybe even all the way to annexing Bower Park and that area, Ocean Ridge subdivision. So I don't know. That's when the ideas came up back when, revolving around an assessment district. So, but I haven't heard about annexing. I've heard about, there was talk back when a group with RCMS, this must have been 10, 15 years ago, about the possibilities of incorporation, but there was very little that one heard, and it never was presented as to anybody like Kevin has done. So I don't know. I'm just chiming in here and saying where I'm coming from a little bit, but go ahead. If other council members want to say what their initial thoughts are, please take your 3 minutes or whatever.
I'll just say quickly, my video is going to turn off. I'm going to go say goodnight to a toddler, but I'm still listening.
Go then. You go first, Henry, if you want.
Oh, no, I'll come in at the end. It's only going to take me a couple of minutes, but I'm
okay,
still
then-
here and listening. I'm just not going to have video on.
Then you come back. You come back and see us. We'll listen to some other council members.
Will do.
I'll
Thank you.
take a turn.
Thanks, Tom. Go ahead.
I want to thank Kevin for doing the research and raising the options. I felt a lot of bias in his presentation towards the idea of incorporation. More objectively, I would agree with Dan that I'd like to, if we were going to go in that direction, towards doing something more to support local services, I would look more towards expanding the service district responsibilities. The service district current administration may not think that's a great idea, but if the community wants to do that with their service district, the community has a right to do that. The idea of annexation is something that I've toyed around with for the last few years. It makes a lot of sense to me. The city of Point Arena has suffered because it's so small and probably would never get approval. And I doubt Gualala would ever get approval to incorporate today. Point Arena was incorporated a very long time ago, and rules have changed, and I think it'd be very difficult to incorporate a city the size of Gualala. I don't think it's a great idea. I personally think that creating another special district would be adding to bureaucracy. Creating a city would be a colossal mistake in my view. It would not give you $4 million would be a drop in the bucket of what you need to run a city. It sounds like a lot of money, but it's the price of 4 houses in Gualala these days. Just the staff alone would be far exceeding that requirement. So I would encourage you to look towards expanding the service district, or simply work more with the county to reorganize their funding to get a better share return to Gualala, and find out how much services are being returned to Gualala, which is something that the county could calculate if it spends the time. If you add up all those taxes we pay, how much of that comes back? I know TOT, for example, has been a controversy for a long time. But creating a new city, I don't think would get approved. It would require approval of the city of Point Arena. They might be for it. I think they'd see a lot of advantages for it. It would incorporate a lot more land between the two cities. That would be add to the tax base and help pay for services. And I think it's much more approachable from the LAFCO point of view to expand a small city than to create another small city and another bureaucracy. So I think the idea of incorporating a new city is just really a non-starter from my point of view. Thanks.
Thank you. Henry?
So yeah, I mean, I would, to jump on what Tom was saying, I mean, I do think the fact that it took so long to fully stock GMAC with members, and we still don't have an alternate, is not terribly encouraging from the capacity of the community to form an entire city government apparatus. Obviously, it's a different thing, and salaried employees and whatnot, but it doesn't make me feel like the community necessarily has the capacity that would be required for that, from a population standpoint, from an interest standpoint, from a financial standpoint in general. I do think a lot of those problems, I would imagine, exist in Point Arena, and since that city exists and isn't going anywhere, I feel like getting annexed is something worth exploring. As Tom was saying, I think it would, the amount of revenue flowing into Point Arena would substantially increase, especially with property values as they have been further down the coast in Gualala, and the TOT revenue. I personally do not love being part of an unincorporated community, the county feels very far away, and like they don't really know what's going on with us or particularly care in a lot of cases. And when I've reached out to them, it feels like I'm skipping pretty far above, and it's hard to get their time or attention. I think if we were part of Point Arena, I would imagine that would be much easier. I mean, I could drive up to Point Arena regularly enough. I could attend those meetings in person. Obviously, I can't, driving to Ukiah for Board of Supervisors meetings is sort of unfeasible to do on a regular basis. So I like the idea of that much more than I like the idea of incorporating our own city, and more than I like the idea of remaining unincorporated. But I have no idea whether it's feasible, whether the Point Arena community is interested, whether the city wants the revenue, or whether they feel like that's extending themselves too far. That's just my completely uninformed take, is that feels more viable to me than forming our own city, and more useful than remaining unincorporated. Again, it's a completely uninformed take, so take that for what it is.
Okay, thanks for your comments, Henry. I see Don has a little clock in the corner of his screen. Is that the 3-minute clock?
Yes, thank you for that, by the way.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering. That was helping me too. Who else hasn't spoken yet? Dan, no, wait a minute. Who, Don hasn't, or who else would like to give a couple comments, initial comments?
Yeah, let me make a couple comments here. Let me start the
Okay.
timer.
Please do.
All right. Yeah, it's kind of a interesting idea, to have a city here, certainly. I mean, there's some nice attributes of a city that we just, lack here in terms of any kind of a budget, no property, to manage or to put facilities or infrastructure that we think are needed. But on the other hand, it seems like a vast project. And it certainly would be most likely much easier to expand the territory or the functionality of the community services district. And or we did want to go the city route, join Point Arena. So I think what we could do, if there is real interest here in any of these options, is to set up some committee, exploratory committee, and see where this takes us, and or investigate and analyze the benefits and the advantages and disadvantages of these different approaches. And I suspect that if there was a real desire on the part of the community, which there would have to be, to form a city or even to join Point Arena, that we would probably need some kind of an outside consultant to come in and really look at all the legal aspects of doing something like this, and making sure that we've covered all the bases before attempting to make something like this happen. So bottom line is, if we want to look into this further, it's a vast subject. Let's set up a committee and then go from there. But yeah, I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time on it right now.
No, right. Okay. Have we heard from everybody on the specific matter of this? Dan, did you want to put in? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of jumped the gun on it a little bit. There's two things that come to my mind again. Maybe I'm bipolar. Anyway, I seem to come up with these forks in the road. Expanding the community services district would probably be easier in terms of the overall amount of work it would take. incorporating a new city would be a fairly major undertaking. I think if you take the long view of where you want to be in 30 years, 50 years, even 100 years, the incorporation of a separate city would probably be the best route to take. Just my opinion. The cities of Point Arena and the area of Gualala, whatever we want to call ourselves, municipality or what, it's not, it's just the area, have very different personalities. And I think, we approach the world from different world views even. Point Arena is a small, quirky city, and they probably would, knowing people there that, as I do, would probably prefer to remain that way. That's just my take on it. Of course, you got to ask them, but I'd be willing to bet that they would want to be subsumed by incorporating an area like Gualala into their city, and then having the out of the voting power move south.
Okay. Dan's been cut off, it sounds like. Are you still there, Dan? Okay. So
Done.
you're done. Okay. So we've heard a lot of initial input on this. Again, Kevin, thanks for doing it. I say we just table it from here on for now. Maybe bring it up again at next meeting, or do we want to form a committee, or what do we want to do, council?
Robert, I'd like to suggest a high-level conversation. I feel like maybe we're disrespecting Point Arena by just talking about this openly without having consulted them. I'd like to suggest that you personally meet with Scott Ignacio, or maybe Richie Wasserman, or somebody up on the city council up in Point Arena, and just say, hey, this came up in our meeting and we had some loose talk about this. There's some pluses and minuses for it. Dan's covered a few of those, I think. But I think you ought to just talk to them and just say, would you guys ever consider this? What's the problems for you for running a small city? Would it make sense to have a larger city that goes from the county line up to the north end of Point Arena? And just kind of start there with that. As far as the community service district, Robert, I don't think there's anybody on the council that comes near to you in understanding how the community service district works. And you went through LAFCO with that too, I believe.
Right.
And you know what headaches it can be to go through LAFCO and forming a new agency, even a district. I'm not going to say for or against any propositions here, but I think the first thing to do is try to preserve the character of Gualala. Gualala is a very special place, and I'd hate to see it change radically. I think people might like the idea of, we get more services and we keep our tax money at home, but they may not realize everything that comes with that. And it's a fairly complicated mess to run a city. It's a very expensive proposition. And I don't think it's appropriate for our council really to get into this too deep at this point. I think tabling it is the right motion at this point. And but I think, Robert, maybe you as chairman should go forward and talk to a few people rather than setting up a subcommittee.
Well, I welcome any suggestions from any one of you. At present, I think we as a council should talk about this a little bit further internally, okay? One of the things I think with any plan of action we went forward with would be we'd have to have the blessing of ourselves as a council and of the greater community, our current constituency, I would think. So, we have a jurisdictional area that happens to coincide with what Kevin brought up, which is the South Coast Fire District. That seemed like back when we were forming the Gualala Town Plan, that was a good geographic boundary. We kind of handle that as a GMAC. The sewer district is a different boundary. you know, there was only so much money allotted for taking care of sewer service, but we got to somehow talk about this a little bit more so we get more of our ideas across internally as a council, I think, because it was just brought up tonight revolving around this the Parks Committee and the fact that we are probably never going to have more money to do anything with our cherished local park, other than what Henry, Kevin, and Dan told us about, which was the removal of the trees, you know, the jeopardy that they were creating our local citizens. So I got a lot of questions, a lot of pros and cons. You know, I think about all the work that's gone into some of the other things that we've done here in the community. Streetscape is a big one. How this ties in with our existing town plan. Yeah, sure. The only thing we're shy of is having our own police protection in this community. And a lot of the other districts and ambulance district, fire district, they're all pretty much self-supporting themselves. So I could go on and on here, but I have a lot of questions. And so how do we do this? Can we continue to get more information through you guys as the Parks Committee on this and just leave it like that for the time being? Or what? Because I'd kind of like to table it for now. Otherwise, we're not going to stop talking about it. And then we move on to the rest of our agenda and take it up further next month.
Well, I would say that it's gone beyond the Parks Department, Parks
It
Committee.
has. I agree.
I think that it's something that, Robert, you should, as chairman, look into, and if appropriate, appoint a couple of council people to carry on. But
And
first, I think you should reach out to some of the other parties here and just let them know that we're talking about this, because it's just disrespectful. You know, let me just speak to one other point. I think,
sure.
you know, a couple of people mentioned the idea of identities of Point Arena and Gualala, and that's occurred to me as well. And I come from the New York area, where Brooklyn and Bronx are part of the same city. But if you tell people from Brooklyn or Bronx that they are, you'll get an argument over that. In Staten Island, that's a whole other thing. I think it's very easy to maintain the regional identities of those areas. And if you have a city, you could have different divisions of it. And I don't think it's necessarily going to be, well, all that becomes part of Point Arena, but you form a new city that incorporates both of them. And it's using the Point Arena city to expand the boundaries, and that would be the easiest thing to get through LAFCO if you went that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the special district makes more sense, actually.
Okay. Henry.
Yeah, I think that my preferred next step would either be a subcommittee or a separate one-off, you know, item specific GMAC meeting. I do think, Tom, I hear your point about, well, it's disrespectful to sort of be bandering around these options before finding out if they're even possible. And so maybe that is the appropriate next step, is to have that conversation first. I could also see it as being, well, if you come and say, well, you know, we kind of like, we have no idea whether it's a thing we even want to pursue, but first we want to ask you to address feasibility. Like, I could also see that being, you know, the wrong foot to start on, as opposed to saying, we think this is something that we really want to consider and we would like your input on it. You know, if we start invoking that and then say, well, actually, we're kind of thinking about doing this other thing. I don't know which is the right first step, is to start inquiring with these other outside things, or to decide internally whether it's something we're actually interested in. And I know I would love to keep Kevin involved. Just, he has already talked to so many of these other relevant parties and has done so much research. Like, I wouldn't want to lose that expertise that he's built and that effort that he's put in, those contacts that he's made over the last couple of months. Yeah, but what I don't want to do is just sort of say, well, we'll table it till the next monthly meeting, because I feel like we're just going to wind up in the same place of, there's too much conversation and not enough time, because, well, there will be other THPs, there will be other, you know, there will be other things that crop up onto the agenda, and this just needs its own space, whether that be subcommittee or its own meeting. That's my take.
Yeah, okay,
One thing I'm thinking is that I'm sure this has occurred to Point Arena. And Point Arena also has an extremely deep knowledge base in what it takes to run a city, the problems they've had, the issues they had. And I think we could learn a lot. It might illuminate our knowledge on this if we at least broach them and just say, hey, we talked about this and we'd love to have your input. And what do you think? And does this make any sense at all? And they may just shoot it down immediately. So that may end that conversation.
fellow council members, out of
This conversation is starting to go on and
Don,
on. and
sorry.
I'm really
I know,
hoping,
I know.
Robert, that you just cut it off.
Don, I'm trying to, but out of respect for our administrative secretary, who I've worked with on this council since 2003, I'd like to hear a little bit from her, if that's okay with you, fellow council members.
Sure.
Okay, Mary, would you like to chime in a little bit on this matter?
I feel that talking, as you have said, with all sorts of districts, organizations, cities, etc., to get better input on what this is. It's my understanding that cities don't incorporate anymore because of the money that is levied against them. So the counties or whomever state does not lose any revenue. And it's an exceeding burden on the city. Taxes raise, fees raise, and we're already taxed and fees almost to death regarding the sewer and the school and the RCMS and the fire district and et cetera, to the point where, you know, my taxes have gone up considerably over the last 5 or 6 years. So really, really looking at it and tearing it apart limb for limb and getting everyone else's opinion before, you know, you leap is very, very reasonable to me. I would hate to say table it before you decide who is going to research it, to whom they are going to speak, etc. But yeah, it's too deep a subject for my little old mind. And you know, as you said, I've been working with this since 2003. It's a very, very huge rabbit hole that goes to the center of the world. Good luck.
Okay. Thanks for that, Mary. Okay.
And thank you for allowing me to talk.
Yeah,
Say a
Mary,
word.
you've been around a long time. I've been around a long time, and we just wanted to hear from you too. So I wish there was a way we could just say, hey, let's table it till next month and say, and under the same item like we have on Parks Committee, we have the letter I, LAFCO information, and we all pursue reading the document a little bit further and getting more up to speed with all the information that's in that document. I started, and I can't say I've read it all, but if there was to be a committee organized and created tonight on this, I would probably want Kevin to head it up, and because he's done the initial research, as Henry alluded to, I'd probably need to be a part of it, and would want to be a part of it, and we could have maybe a third member, as long as we're still not exceeding the quorum of a committee. I also worry about my role on GCAP committee, how we continue with that. So there's a lot of questions in my mind, and I just can't seem to come up with a decision right quickly here without you guys' help on what to do with this voluminous agenda item here, or information we've been given tonight. So I guess Kevin and
Robert,
go ahead, Kevin.
Can I offer something?
You chime in, please. Okay.
To kind of land the plane here. All the groups that I've listed, I have a lot of information that they have shared with me that I was not going to share in a public forum here, because without some direction and guidance from GMAC. because all of the times that I've spoke with all these groups was not representing GMAC because I had not received your direction or approval. So there's a lot more behind the scenes information that I've received from every single group, including our supervisor, that I would be happy to share. If GMAC wanted to move forward with establishing a committee, I would be happy to share that information with the committee that I've gleaned from all these other groups. But no, it's definitely not something that should be shared in a public forum right now because it's still in an exploratory phase. So I leave it up to you. If you'd like to establish a subcommittee, that would be great. Or if the GMAC would like to go a different direction.
Okay, what would be a potential name of this subcommittee that what would we call it?
Robert's Committee.
No, that's the last thing we would do.
Service expansion,
Um,
service expansion committee.
Gualala Service Expansion Committee? Services.
I'm not.
How about just the Gualala
Just throwing something
Services,
out.
Gualala Services Committee, and incorporate the Parks Committee into that? And basically repurpose the Parks Committee to look at a broader range of services, but make it the Gualala Services Committee. And Robert, I do think that you should be part of that.
Yeah, I would want to
and
be
perhaps Dan wants to get involved. I think this is an important committee.
as the,
Yeah, I'm happy to step away from it. I don't, but yeah, I don't feel like I have
No,
the expertise that some others are.
as the current chair, I'd be wanting to be part of that. So if we made if Henry says he wants to step away, maybe Henry would become part of the GCAP committee. But I would be part of that Gualala Services Committee along with Kevin and maybe whoever else, as long as we have enough council members on the council.
I nominate
sound-
Dan as a third member.
Well, who would want to be? First of all, would he want to be? Would Don want to be? Would Melissa want to be? We have to ask who would want to be part of this committee, in addition to Kevin and I.
I don't necessarily want to be on the committee, so
Okay,
most does.
Yeah.
Melissa,
And I
Dan.
do think this is a good idea.
Okay,
Not particularly, I'm not.
okay,
Okay,
so Dan, would you be?
yeah,
Okay,
I'll do it.
so we've got that as a committee then, all right? Does that sound like a plan, a potential committee?
Good.
I
plan.
like it. From what I've been listening, it sounds like Robert, Dan, and Kevin are the most qualified to
Okay, let's
talk about this in depth.
jot that down as being a Gualala Services Committee or something, whatever we want to call it. We can always change the name if we decide to down the road, but let's temporarily
Well,
make that a plan for our next agenda so we can gather information further. And then maybe Henry, would you consider helping me out on GCAP down the road if Tom's not going to be around anymore?
Sure. Yes.
Okay, just to keep going what we got going already on committees.
And I would just note that Melissa has also in the past expressed interest in joining GCAP, so
Okay,
maybe she'd want to help out there as a backup.
that's right. Okay, I forgot that. So, okay, we got a little bit of a plan of action here. Should we kind of bring this part of the agenda to a close so we can move on or not?
Yes.
Why don't you call the committee the future of Gualala's, the future of Gualala Committee?
We can still talk about that, but that's a good suggestion for the potential future for the committee, okay?
You know,
Okay.
what I suggest is, what is important here that we have to keep in mind is that the public needs to be informed of what
Yeah.
we're doing all the time. And there was no notice about this type of discussion
No,
for meeting, nothing.
That's why we haven't made any
Thank-
decision.
Let me finish, please, Melissa. So I think if we create this new committee, which I do think is a good idea, on the agenda for next month, we should define this committee so that the public knows what it is.
a little bit more accurately, in other words, okay?
Well,
Yes.
may I just say, our friends at the ICO usually watch this recording. And guys, if you would please write a story about this issue, it would be appreciated. Well, I'm
Okay.
sure we'll get a lot of input after that. And KTUA may want to have a conversation with some of the committee members as well, just to find out what we've talked about so far.
Yeah,
But I think the community will understand that we're trying to find the best way to bring more services and more value to the community of Gualala. And I think everybody's in favor of that. And we would very much value the community input.
Exactly.
Okay, then
And I
what
can
about,
tell you,
what about calling it Gualala Future Services Committee?
yes,
Don?
Future services, yeah. that's okay.
Gualala, Gualala Future Services Committee. It could be more than one service. Kevin, what do you think? Dan, what do you guys think?
I think you
Sounds
can
good.
call it a banana as long as it's addressing the needs of the people.
Gualala, okay, let's call it Gualala Banana Belt Future Services Committee. No, I mean, that kind of encompasses what we're trying to do here, isn't it? Gualala Future Services Committee,
yes.
Sounds great
trying to
me.
get more services for Gualala, and it's for our future.
Yes,
Technically, I
yes.
think it's up to the chairman to decide what to call a committee, if you read
Well,
your bylaws.
I'm
The only problem with that is it's kind of a mouthful, you know.
You know, take the bananas out.
Gualala Services Committee is fine, as long as we define it so people know what it is.
okay. Well, that's going to be up to the committee to further define it. But if we call it for now, so we can move on with our agenda, Gualala Services Committee, is that good with everybody?
Perfect.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so that's just a small decision we've made. We haven't done anything else. And if anybody wants to listen to what we've said tonight, we are concerned about the services that Gualala is receiving back from the county, and we want to do something about it. With regards to the park, we'll decide on that too at a future point. But does that mean we disband the Parks Committee at this point, or what are we doing?
I think that
that's
becomes
what it
part of
says.
this conversation.
I thought you were gonna
Yeah.
put it underneath this committee as a subcommittee of the committee.
I don't think you need
Okay.
a subcommittee. I think it becomes part of this
think-
committee.
We need
I
a
think
real,
the parks was a subcommittee that was, the park closed, and we didn't want the park to be closed, and that
Right.
it became a broader question about the future of the park, which I think that agenda item folds neatly into the Gualala Services Committee. I think we stood up a committee while the park was closed. It's reopened. I think it makes sense to wind that committee down and say that its role is getting taken over by this broader question.
Yeah.
okay. If you're all in favor of that, I mean, we can always say, there's a sub item which under the Gualala Services Committee, which is about the parks, or wrap it all up, how, like we've done with this agenda where we received this information from Kevin regarding LAFCO on what is it, the heading on this, a guide to LAFCO process for incorporations. Parks would be underneath the Gualala Services Committee heading, agenda heading, okay?
Sure.
Okay, well, I think we're all kind of agreeing to doing that for the time being, and then next month we'll go further, okay?
May I inquire, you were saying something about Mr. Mayor being appointed to a committee, onto which committee was he and Ms. Finley appointed, if you did?
Okay, Tom, he's gonna speak to that later, but he's definitely leaving us, right?
No, I'm inquiring about Mr. Mayor, whether he and Ms. Finley were appointed to the
GMAC, GCAP.
to the GCAP and or whatever. And I was
Okay.
wondering if that happened because I kind of missed it and I want that to be part of the minutes.
Let's talk
Okay.
about that under GCAP.
Let's do that, okay.
Very well.
So we've closed this agenda item. Let's move on to GCAP committee.
There we are.
Here we are.
Well, that was a long trip.
Wow, it was.
All right,
What do we have to
let's
say?
Let's
Hey,
make
but
this a
that-
shorter, let's make this a shorter one. I'm resigning
let
from the GCAP committee.
Hang
because
on a
the-
second, Tom, hang on a
Okay.
second. Let me go back to Kevin on the Parks Committee and Dan and Henry, and thank you for all the presentation you made on that, okay? So Kevin, thanks again. Onward to the GCAP, and Tom, what do we have to tell them about GCAP this past month? Not a whole lot, do we?
No, I think the good news is that GCAP has pretty much stabilized. We've turned it over basically to the Coastal Commission and to MCOG. I have more faith in them to keep Caltrans honest in this pursuit. They're very aware of our positions on this as a council and as a community. They have the history, and no matter what happens, I will always be close by as a resource to help on this issue should anything flare up. So I would like to resign from the GCAP committee, and I'd like to see Melissa and Henry take my place, and with Robert's guidance, move forward on this and just make sure that this boat comes smoothly into dock. We're close, and we're just basically waiting for process to play out. But if anything does happen, reach out to me, and I will remain involved and can still participate even whether I'm on GMAC or not, as a leader of Save Gualala. So
Okay.
we'll go that way with it. But nothing new has happened with GCAP this month, Robert, unless you have something to add.
Okay, Tom, thanks for that officialness of your resignation from the GCAP, because I kind of wasn't, things happen in real estate, so you never know, but you're pretty much closed and gone. So all I wanted to reiterate was from last month that I went ahead and sent the GMAC letter of support. I provided that to the MCOG regarding the latest ATP, that's the Alternative Transportation Plan grant application. Okay, so that's where we fell a little short last year. They have improved the grant application apparently, so let's see where that takes us later on in the year. And then back to Tom's resignation. Henry and Melissa, you're willing to be part of GCAP from here on in, as long as we have the right number of council members
Yes,
as a three-party. Okay. So you accept that duty. Okay, I appreciate that. So having gone through all those formalities, I think we're done with GCAP committee for this meeting. Onward to Housing and Economic Development Committee.
Yeah, I would say that this has been an important committee, even though it hasn't done much in the last year or so. But really, everything we're talking about tonight and all the services you'll be talking about in the future would be related to economic development and housing. So I'd like to tie that into the services committee if the chairman thinks
Okay.
that's a good idea, and just basically dissolve that committee as well and bring it into services, which become a pretty powerful little committee.
Personally, I think that's a good idea. I could see how that could work. Any other council members' input on that idea?
sounds like a good idea.
Because that's in revolving service, right?
Right.
Our economics, our housing, lack of housing for certain, okay. I'm just making a note of it because Tom was the only one on that committee, so it would behoove us to have more more council members on a committee like that. And under services, Gualala Services Committee, that would be a good idea. Anybody else want to say something on that one? Okay. Anything else on that
No, I have nothing else on that tonight.
committee? Okay. Let's go on to electric vehicle charging station. Don, you're all by yourself on that one.
Yeah, well, that's okay. This sounds like everybody else is getting busy on with other assignments. But I don't have anything new to report. I think I made a summary of where we're at last month, and that's still valid. Nothing has changed. And I certainly will keep the council up to date if I get any new information as to, when and where the state is going with proposals, applications for any grant funding for EV charging stations, which ultimately is funded by the federal government.
Mhm. And then there was that little bit that we received from you and Travis earlier in the meeting, right? Which
Yeah,
wasn't,
I was aware of that quite a while back, that the county was applying for these funds for that purpose. And I think I did send an email to Ted Williams regarding that and hoping that they could squeeze some money and head it our way.
yeah,
For the charging station here, but that was not able to happen. It was strictly for the county's use, for their fleet of vehicles.
right.
And which is great. I mean, I think it's great that the county's going to get that money and they're going
Mhm.
to head in the direction of electrifying their fleet. It has to be done, and I think that's great. So we're just going to have to wait a while for some other funding to show up.
Okay. All right, Don, thanks. This one's, I wonder on how this is going to go on. Telecommunications Committee, as of this point forward.
Just say
Don?
that there were 47 views last month, and then I'll turn it over to Don, who's going to be the telecommunications committee going forward, I think.
Yeah, well, I'll just continue, what Tom has done in terms of putting the video up on YouTube, and of course updating the website as needed. And I will report back to you if there's anything new or interesting related to these efforts, such as the number of visitors and that kind of thing.
Would you want any help with that, Don? Does anybody have the expertise to help you on that? Maybe
Maybe.
Henry?
I am a software engineer.
Okay.
I'm happy to make myself of service if Don would like.
Well,
Just
then,
so-
yeah, since Tom is resigning, if you want to become part of the telecommunications committee, that'd be great, Henry.
Okay. That'd be great. Okay, so we're perpetuating it ourselves here, hopefully.
And actually, one other thing, it really is good to have two people familiar with some of this stuff. So I think something Tom and I didn't really fully complete, but we need to be in a position where either one of us, Henry, if you're on this committee now, either you or me can either run the meeting or update the website or, upload videos to YouTube.
Mhm.
So that if one of us is out of town or somehow, I may want to go to Europe or something. I don't know. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
there could be a time when I'm not available to do any one of
It's
these.
a bad
things.
idea to have single points of failure.
Exactly. Single point of failure. is
Sounds like
not
an
good.
engineer.
Sounds like an engineer. Okay,
So we can get together on that, Henry. No
great.
problem.
Yeah, great.
Okay, and then we go, thank you, guys. And then we go on to the Water Ad Hoc Committee. We didn't meet this past month, but that's a new, well, that committee has added Melissa to it. So we need to get together at one of these points. I've done just a little bit before our meeting tonight, and I looked at what the rain events in this past month's June and July, how that affected our flows in the Gualala River. And it did somewhat. Okay, I'm looking at a chart here where compared to last year, we were going from the June 1st onward, we were going down, down, down in flow to around 2 cubic feet per second at the gauge. This year, because of a rain event in June, right around the first week of June, where we really spiked in our flows, and then to this most recent event, which was just a little bit of a dribbling, we're right around 10 cubic feet per second of flow, which is a little bit closer to the 15-year median daily statistic that it shows on the USGS website. But it does also go down rather rapidly, and especially as we get coming out of COVID, having more and more tourists, more and more water use in our area, I can see these figures going down rapidly again, where the river is at stake, and we have to possibly go back into a conservation mode or even a rationing mode. Who knows? But I'll keep track of this, and hopefully we can get together, Don and Melissa, and have a water ad hoc committee meeting this next month.
Yeah, one thing we were considering doing is writing a letter to North Gualala Water Company about the recent robocall that I think everybody got. I don't know
Oh, yeah.
if you remember it, but the robocall said the mandatory water conservation was terminated. And most likely it's because the river flow, at least compared to last year, is up. Correct,
Mhm.
Robert?
Yeah.
Above, what is the threshold where mandatory water conservation has to kick in? Isn't that 4 cubic feet per second?
This time of year, I believe it's 4 cubic feet per second. Yeah.
Okay, so if it's less than that, then, so that's perhaps why this happened, but I don't know, I think Robert and I talked about it a little bit. I just think the whole state is in a drought. I mean, it's the 3rd year of a drought, despite, these little rains we got in the spring, late rains. The situation does not look great.
This is supposed to be the driest year California has had in 1,200 years. That's damn dry.
Exactly. So for that reason, the state of water in the entire state, and I do believe Newsom has even asked everybody, and of course this is voluntary too, to reduce water consumption by 15%. He probably needs to do more than that in order for people to really start conserving water. But we just felt ending mandatory water conservation sort of is the, wrong thing to let people, consume more and more water without any controls.
I didn't get that call.
You should have, Melissa.
We haven't done anything, and yeah, if we do anything, you're part of the group now. So
No, she should have gotten that robocall.
I didn't.
oh, well,
My
you didn't-
cell phone, my cell phone is a 925 area code, though. I
You
don't
know,
know why.
Come to
Okay,
think of
are
it,
you a
Melissa.
customer? Are you a
Melissa,
customer? of
come
the
to
water
think.
company?
Sorry, Don, go ahead.
I was just asking her if she's a customer of the water company.
Well,
directly.
yeah, I was gonna say something to that effect, Don. Come to think of it, because the park as an entirety got a call. The
The park got a call. I
Right.
didn't get a call.
I understand. And that's maybe something that we can work on, Melissa. Each and every resident within, Ocean View Estates there should get a call so that each individual.
I have jumped up and down and screamed and clamored and said that there needs to be a regular newsletter with actual information about what's going on, but I don't get anywhere.
Okay, well, let's take that up with management at Ocean View Estates, and they can then get in contact with the water company and give them all the numbers of the different residents in Ocean View Estates and include them in the robocall. We can work on that. We'll work on that.
We'll talk about it.
Okay. So anything else under Water Ad Hoc Committee? Thanks, Don, for your input on that too. Okay, we're getting late here. What time is it?
Bedtime,
8:57.
dark, time go sleep.
We don't have any review assignments. Mary, I haven't received the invoice from June for you yet, have I?
Yes, I mailed it to you the other day, emailed it on Tuesday, I do believe,
I better check.
because
then.
I was late in getting it to Dava, so
Okay, I'll get it
if not,
forwarded.
I'll send it again. I'll make a note.
I'll get it forwarded to the county then, okay? Yeah, send it to me again, just in case. I'll look too tonight. On the vice chair,
Do you want me to report on it?
oh yeah, if you have that information, I'm sorry.
I do.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Let's see. Oh, yes. I worked 15.47 hours in June. Materials were $1.59 for a total of $272.26.
Okay, Mary.
And there was something I wanted to ask. Oh dear me, what was it? I didn't write it down. That's the problem. It went flying through my head and I thought, oh, I'll write that down, and I didn't. And it was
Okay.
something about, well, if I remember it, I'll let you know. I'll email everyone regarding it.
Okay,
And I apologize. Usually I'm on top of stuff like that.
okay. Well, then we're on to Tom's report.
And I actually have some news tonight. As has been alluded to a few times during the meeting, I will be leaving GMAC. This will be my last meeting. I've officially resigned effective July 20th. And the reason I left 2 weeks is to allow this Board of Supervisors to consider a replacement. It does my heart good to see the council at full strength. And I think when I leave, it'll have minimal effect on the effectiveness of the council. I'm extremely grateful to my colleagues here, both present and past. There have been some disagreements, friendly disagreements, I like to think. And that's okay, that's what we're about. We can work those out and come together for a conclusion. I'm really thankful to the people of Gualala, to Ted Williams, to Dan Jurdy, who's to the district to the north of ours in the Board of Supervisors, and the other supervisors like John Hanchek, who's come in and helped us on Streetscape a number of times. To Mary Ann Petrillo from the West Business Development Center, who's really taken an interest in the economic development here. To the sheriff, who's shown up at every meeting since he's been sheriff, or has sent a representative when he was really busy with an emergency. We have a great sheriff in our county. And to other MACs around the county who I've come to know very well, shared their problems, shared our problems with them, and found allies and great conversations there. I encourage somebody on the council to continue to work in that direction. To folks at Caltrans who work on the alternative transportation programs, who have been a tremendous help on Streetscape and other matters. To the ICO for its coverage of our meetings. I think a newspaper in a community is a vital resource, and we're very lucky to have the ICO. I'm a journalist by trade, 40 years in the business, and God knows I don't ever agree with everything they do over there, but I'm glad they do it. I'd like to also just say this is a great place. It has the best people in the world, as far as I'm concerned, the most generous and kind and thoughtful people. Nobody wants to change this. No, and I think one responsibility of every member of this community, including and especially this council, is to protect Gualala, to make sure it is preserved and its ethic is preserved going forward. It is no longer a timber town. Its future lies in other directions, but it doesn't have to become Carmel by the Sea either. It doesn't have to have fast food restaurants. It can look a whole lot better downtown, but the character of Gualala needs to be preserved. It's a great place to live, and I hope the housing problem gets easier to solve going forward. It would if we did some new things with water, but at the same time, watch out for developers who will rush in and build 50 cheap tract homes and permanently change the character of the community and not to the benefit. And we need housing for workers because there are a lot of workers here and they need a place to live. We need teachers, we need healthcare workers, and they don't make the most money in the world despite a lot of thinking in that regard. I support the plan for Streetscape, and I want to point out that we've posted 39 videos over the last 2 years. That's an amazing accomplishment. Thousands of people have watched those, almost all of them in Gualala. And the two that got the most were 276 for the coronavirus video, which was our very first one. It was a town meeting that we put together and produced, brought in experts, and in the space of a week, provided the community with some serious, really good information from people who know what they were talking about. So that got 276 views. The most popular video in the past 2 years was a year ago when the town came together to support Plan 4A for Streetscape. And that got 472 views, which is a lot. That's 10 times what we got for our last month's meeting. And that's not counting the 95 views we got for the regular meeting, which included all the streetscape stuff that month. So I encourage Don and others to keep working on the video project and keep that going and keep people informed, get them to participate more. My most important message to the people of Gualala is speak to the members of the council, tell them your concerns, have a dialogue, not just a monologue telling them what's wrong, but a dialogue to help contribute to fixing them. We're all community volunteers, and this is a community that runs on volunteers. I'm extremely grateful to everybody who volunteers on every level in this community. It's what keeps Gualala running now. And our new committee, I hope you'll look into that and the role of volunteers going forward in services. I don't think volunteerism itself is a sustainable model without strong support from some overarching government to make sure that those people know that they're appreciated, supported, and have the resources they need to do their jobs better. I'll remain within easy reach. People can reach out to me at murphy@redwoodage.com or through the council. I'm sure everybody knows where I'll be. And I'll be probably leaving Gualala, but I maintain property in the area. So I will no longer be eligible to serve on GMAC, but I will be very interested in what's going on in GMAC. I remain a part of Save Gualala, which has 1,700 supporters and is committed to supporting the town plan. We have a great town plan. Everybody should read it in town, especially chapters 1 and 3, and understand the issues that we face as a community. These are issues not determined by us on this council or me or Robert or anybody else, but have been determined by the community over the past 30 years. And we just reflect what they said. So that's it. Thanks very much. I appreciate the opportunity to serve this community, and I hope everybody will reach out to me if there's ever anything I can do in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you for your service, Tom.
Yes,
We've really appreciated it and relied upon it.
My pleasure.
I'm sure all the council members feel that way, and you know, we're gonna miss you. So,
Shucks.
Yeah, thank you, Tom.
I agree. Tom, you definitely will be missed here. I think you brought a lot of energy, intelligence, thoughtfulness, to your work on this council. And so I think that will, historically is going to be appreciated, especially all the work you did on GCAP and those presentations you made, which were incredibly professional and informative. I know you put a tremendous amount of work in those, and that showed. And I just want to express my appreciation for your participation on this council. And you will be missed.
Well, thank you, Don, and thank you all. I really appreciated it. I'll be around town next week, and everybody wants to get together for a beer or a burger or something. I'll send out some emails and where and when I'll be available. So we can do that.
okay, thanks, Tom. So Chair Youngling's report. My report's gonna be a tribute to Tom, okay? In all my years being involved in Gualala Community Service, I have never met anyone as engaged and enthusiastic as Tom. His journalism expertise, technology skills, and overall commitment to the causes and issues of the Gualala community as a whole are hard to match. His attention to detail and understanding of the spirit of the Gualala Town Plan are admired and respected. Thank you for your tenure with GMAC, Tom. All the best in Santa Rosa, and we'll see you around.
Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome. You're most welcome. Okay, any last words from anybody? It was a great
Yes.
meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
I'll
Melissa,
second that.
you're still there. All right, I hear a second. Okay, let's take a voice vote. Is Dan still there?
Yes.
Okay,
Aye.
you vote to adjourn? Aye. Henry,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Melissa,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Aye.
Tom. I
Aye.
said Don,
Oh.
Tom, and
We
Robert.
both voted yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We are adjourned officially. Thanks again, you guys, for all your input and
9:08.
Good night, guys.
great thoughts. Been much input. Okay, good night.
Bye-bye, Walla.
Thanks.
Kevin, can you stay on for a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Tom.
You guys.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Have a good week and a good month, everybody.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye, everybody.
And
You
thank
too.
Tom.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome, and thank you so much for everything you've done and all the eyes you've had on the minutes. I've really appreciated it.
I'm an editor. What can I do?
I appreciate it more than you know. Thank you.
Take care, Mary. Somebody else will do that next month.
Right, I'm sure they will. Everybody's right on top of it most of the time.
All right, let's let these guys talk. I'm gonna sign off. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye, Henry.
Okay, hey, Kevin,
Yeah.
so let's see, you recorded the second half, correct?
Yeah.
So you'll need to stop the recording and then it should process.
Let's
Did you
see.
store it locally or in the cloud?
It was in the cloud.
It's in the cloud, okay.
What do I hit?
Oh, down at the bottom, it should be pause, stop recording.
Oh, disconnect audio?
No. Down at the bottom of your screen, you should see pause/stop recording.
No. It's
Okay.
still recording.
Okay, I'm gonna.